Well, let's turn our attention back to Cape Town. We're building up to the State of the Nation address at 7 p.m. tonight. Politicians, business people, members of civil society are descending on the mother city. They'll be hoping to hear more about policy certainty, economic stimulation, and just ways to improve the lives of ordinary South Africans. And our reporter Govan Whittles joins us from the parliamentary precinct. Good afternoon to you, Govan. Tell us, what's the mood there? Is there a sense of excitement, anticipation?
Well, there's certainly a sense of preparation, people trying to get their final touches done so that the State of the Nation address could be delivered. Most of these people are members of the government departments that have been tasked with assembling all the infrastructure you see behind me, but also making sure that things take place without a hitch. And of course, the security services are here on the ground, making sure that everything is secured. But this year's State of the Nation address is quite different to the two other addresses which have been delivered by President Cyril Ramaphosa. Remember that with the Tumamina address and the one in February this year, he was a caretaker president. But this time he will be addressing the nation as a democratically elected president and someone who now has full control not only his office in the presidency, but also the functions that are delegated to the president. And the State of the Nation address isn't happening in a vacuum. There have been a number of events that have happened preceding this address, most notably the ANC Lekgotla, the Cabinet Lekgotla, and then some public engagements by the President leading up to today. Let's talk about these now, and I am joined by political analyst and veteran journalist Karima Brown. Karima, thank you for your time. Let's start with the Lekgotlas. They were two significant Lekgotlas because they not only prepared the President for the State of the Nation address, but it also clarified his priorities for this administration.
Yes, absolutely. The key issue with this administration is that we require policy certainty, and we saw, of course, with the ANC Lekgotla the mess that was created around the mandate of the Reserve Bank, forcing the President's hand to come out, as well as the Finance Minister and Enoch Godongwana, the chair of the ANC's Economic Transformation Subcommittee. And essentially what they were saying is that the mandate of the bank won't change, the independence of the bank will be guaranteed, but there will, of course, be discussions, as there was in 2010 when Pravin Gordhan so famously sent the letter to Governor Jill Marcus to inform her about the economic conditions. And already people are talking about a possible rate cut being on the card. So not a blunt instrument to be used, but there was a blunder around the management of the message, around the way in which the South African Reserve Bank would help in stabilizing economic development, and also the question of policy. Then there was the Cabinet Lekgotla, and that, of course, was dominated by headlines around how the different committees in Parliament are going to be chaired, because, of course, the ANC is a mixed bag of people who are there for different reasons, in different factions, belonging to different interest groups. And people wanted to see who exactly is going to be appointed. And yesterday, of course, that list was made available. Some really interesting, developments there. But I think apart from these two state initiatives, what the President also did was a very clever PR campaign. So prior to him, and in between these Lekgotlas, and prior to the address later this evening, he went walkabouting, for example, at a classical fish and chip shop. Very Cape Town thing to do. You and I can relate to that. He met with the National Youth Development Commission, the NYDA, and he also met, of course, with SOEs, particularly Eskom. And so if you look at those issues, of course, we know that Eskom's debt has skyrocketed to something like 500 billion rand and puts the entire fiscus at risk. So we can expect the President to, of course, spend some time on how he's going to be dealing with that. Young people in the economy needs to be absorbed. The question of free education, but also the issue of entrepreneurship and them getting internships in the state so that they can gain experience and be involved in the private sector, as we saw with the YES initiative. And then, of course, just the distinction between this ANC president and other ANC presidents. This president keeps on saying, I'm president of the ANC, but I'm also president of the South African people. So he's immersed himself in the people. So the fish and chips incident was to connect with ordinary people, to exchange with them how they live, like he did during the election campaign on the train. So I think Cyril Ramaphosa is going to be making a speech that's not just going to satisfy the ANC, but that's going to have to look at at the needs of the entire South African people, issues of crime, issues of the economy, and I think those are, for me, the significant things that provides us a context with this State of the Nation address.
He certainly has also explained his desire to implement his vision for South Africa and reconciling the nation, not only across colour lines but economic lines as well. But leading up to the State of the Nation address, there's two incidents that happened. First was the release of the ANC statement on the Lekgotla saying that the mandate of the Reserve Bank had to be revised, and then the statement from the presidency in the top six, after the top six meeting, and then of course after the cabinet Lekgotla and the deliberations around the chairpersons of portfolios and the postponement of that caucus meeting after rumours that some within the ANC were trying to impose their own faction. Do you think the president has managed to portray himself as someone who is in charge of the ANC?
I think he has, because you must remember that it's not a secret that he presides over a contested organization, but each day his power grows. So the fact that certain people are members of or chairpersons of committees doesn't necessarily mean that the criminal investigations that are pending against them and the states of inquiry that are engaged in them will cease. So someone like Faith Mutambi, for example, who is now the committee chair around a COCTA, she faces an ethics committee probe for when she was the communication minister, for the way in which she dealt with the question around the SABC. So that of course goes on. It's a very big issue. The SABC is bankrupt, so she's going to have to account, and she's going to have to appear before the ethics committee. We're going to have to see how this parliament, which is actually very interesting, Govan, because the ANC doesn't have the kind of majority it used to have. There's smaller parties. So I don't think necessarily that the chairs of committees and members of executives are going to get away with some of the transgressions. So I think that what Mr. Ramaphosa has done is the same like he did with the branch nomination processes. People nominated who they wanted, and it reflected the divisions in the ANC. But the rule of law runs its course, and some people will just have to disqualify themselves after a time, as we've already seen with people like Nomvula Mokonyane and Malusi Gigaba.
And of course the president has said that no one will be spared, and he wants the full might of the law to be implemented in his administration. Well, that was Karima Brown, political analyst, veteran journalist. She'll be giving us her views on the dynamics around the State of the Nation address and the events that have preceded it, and we'll follow it. But of course we'll be in the precinct throughout the day speaking to newsmakers and politicians alike. We had a chat to Patricia de Lille a little bit earlier. So her department was given 2 million rand to spend on the infrastructure here at the State of the Nation address. She says they've spent 500,000 rand, and saying that that's the kind of department she wants to lead. There'll be more coming out throughout the day, but for now it's back to you.